Órale, órale. Am I live or what, Holmes? I can't tell, Am I live? Somebody tell me I'm live, I think we're good, Holmes. Órale. This is the Mad Dog, And I'm back. I'm here. I'm looking for this guy, DStyle, man. I'm looking for him, You know why? Because he took my son. He didn't put my son in the featherweight tournament, What's going on with that, Holmes? Come on, How you gonna not put my son in the featherweight tournament, That's hating, You're hating on my son again, bro. I'm looking for DStyle, Where's he at, I came here. I'm looking for him. I can't find him, Where's this guy? I don't know, But let me tell you something, My son he probably would have won that featherweight tournament, if you let him in. But you were too busy hating, Holmes. You were hating on my son, And that's bullshit, baby. Mad Dog Guerrero, we would have had those guys ready to go, man. The only guy I think that might have beat my son was Salvador Sanchez, Because he's the best, But let me tell you something, Oh, there he is.
Well, wait a minute. Like this show is supposed to start with a bang, with me saying thanks to those joining me live and to those that be joining me and GFunky on archive. I don't know where GFunky's at. I hope you didn't kidnap him or somewhere's yet.
Don't worry
But
about
he told me that you didn't know where he lived now. He got a brand new house, new canton, and he just appeared out of nowhere. What's going on?
That's right, He hasn't invited me to his pad yet, Holmes. He says there's a lot of cavachos over there, So I gotta be cool, So I'm still here in Gilas, I'm still going live from Gilas, Holmes. But let me tell you something, How come you didn't put my son in the featherweight tournament, What's up with that,
I got a show line. I got a show to do. Ruben.
That's bullshit, right, baby. My son should have been in there,
Okay, first of all, your son hasn't been good in 10 years. He should retire. That's number one. Okay, number two. Okay, number two, he didn't make it because he wasn't drafted, bro. Nobody picked him. You know what I mean? Why weren't you in the chat? Why weren't you there to draft your son to be put into that way? An old school, Duke could beat him up in the first round. Why did he do that?
Shit, hold on, let me tell you, man. I was probably partying, when you was doing that show. But when I found out, I was on the lookout for you, Don't make me come up there, Don't make me come over there to Tejas, and find you, Holmes. All right? Because my son the only one I think might have beat my son is Salvador Sanchez, Because he's chingon, But you know what? So was my son, We would have given him a good fight, Holmes. Let me tell you.
Well, shout out to Salvador Sanchez for winning in dominating fashion in featherweight tournament. Make sure you check that at DStyle Boxing, the YouTube channel. Thank you for that plug, Ruben. All right. But before we let you go, Theo Ruben, give us some thoughts, man. Who's the baby nuts of the week? And what are your thoughts on everything going on right now, bro? The world is on fire.
So, Holmes, let me tell you something, I haven't done baby nuts of the week for a while, Holmes. But I'm glad I came back this week for it, Holmes. Because I'm going to say right now, the whole Minnesota Police Department, you guys are the baby nuts of the week for allowing that to go down, for killing that man. That was disgusting, That was disgusting, Holmes. And you know what? It was 4-on-1, They had the guy down. That's baby nuts, That's baby nuts. I guarantee you, if they would have let that dude stand up, he probably would have whooped all of them, I guarantee it. So those guys are the baby nuts of the week for doing that, That's bullshit, baby. And on my watch, you don't get away with that, Holmes. You should let me get those guys in the room by myself, I'll show them a thing or two, Me and my son, we'll beat them up real good, We'll show them what a real man is, They'll get it from a real man this time. And then not any of those other punks, All of them. We want them all of them thrown in jail, And put them in the cell with me, I'll show them a thing or two,
Yeah, and a fair fight, mano y mano, you could take.
I take them all, right now.
Well, I'll tell you, man, a lot of stuff going on in the world, Ruben. Any words of inspiration for anybody?
I just want to say this, There's a lot of things going on. But ¿sabes qué? Up here in Northern California, the blacks and the browns, we get along, And there's been a lot of people trying to divide us, But we ain't going to let it happen here, Holmes. We got to stay strong in these times, And you know what? Mad Dog is here, And he's got everybody's back,
All right. Okay. I think I can let you leave on your own now. I don't have to kick you out this time.
All right, Well, next time, don't forget, my son goes in the tournament, man. Any weight class he's in, he automatically goes in,
So he got eliminated in the second round in the welterweight tournament. if oh no, that was no. Actually, he wasn't even in the welterweight tournament. He was in lightweight tournament. He got eliminated. In the featherweight, he wouldn't have. He wouldn't have hung, bro.
You see this, eh? You see this, eh?
Four
Four
times.
times, eh? Four times, all right?
All right,
Four
all right,
times,
all right,
eh?
all right. With that said, Ruben Guerrero. Peace
We're out
out.
of here, eh? Thanks for having me on, eh?
Absolutely. All right. And thanks to everybody joining me live. And shout out to everyone in the Leave It in the Ring network. If you want to check that out, check it out on YouTube, DStyle Boxing. All right. The YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter at DStyle Boxing. Follow GFunky84 on Twitter as well. We got a great show for you. Make sure you throw a jab at the like button. All right. Make sure you do that. Those watching live on YouTube right now and on archive as well. Donaire wants Rigo a second time. Man, but he's got to get past Oubaali first for the WBC Bantamweight Championship, a fight that was set. Unfortunately, COVID postponed that fight. So I don't know if he'll be able to get past that one. We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about Chocolatito Gonzalez against Gallo Juan Francisco Estrada in a rematch this summer. Should be a good one. Boxing is back June 9th. ESPN going hard. Okay, they're going to have fights on the 9th, the 11th, the 16th, the 18th, the 20th, so on and so forth. They're coming back. They're coming strong. So we look forward to that, man. ESPN is televising a bunch of these fights, all right? And I think I'm back with the GFunky here. GFunky, you on now or what?
Hey, what's going on, man? What's going on to everybody in the chat? Glad to be back, man. Sorry I had to miss last week. Had a personal matter to take care of, but I'm back, man, and I'm glad to be back to talk some boxing, man. And in the midst of all this madness and stuff going on in this world, man, it's glad to be back and talk about boxing, man. That's the escape, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Now, just to continue with the rundown, Morales responds. We've been tracking this back and forth of Morales and Juan Manuel Marquez. So we're going to, touch on that as well. Morales did respond to Marquez. So, okay, we're also going to talk about the 4 most influential Mexican boxers of all time. Okay, so make sure you give us those names. And if you disagree, that's fine because there's so many great names. So there's no right list. But we're going to talk about that as well. The key word is influential. All right. And you are tuning into the Wednesday, June 3rd edition. And we welcome everybody from the Leave It in the Ring network, GFunky.
Yeah, man. That's cool, man. Make sure you guys check us out over there, man.
Absolutely. Check it out, man. Let's start off with this one. Nonito Donaire. He was on a PBC podcast, GFunky, and he was talking about how he would love to fight Guillermo Rigondeaux a second time. And, people have been talking Rigondeaux, going after Monster. And he talked about how he's going monster hunting. But if Nonito Donaire could get past, the Frenchman Oubaali first for the WBC strap at bantamweight, I mean, that's not that bad of a rematch, right? Donaire versus Rigondeaux. What do you think about that potential rematch?
Well, here's what I say to that, man. Rigo, since he lost to Lomachenko, moved back down where he's supposed to be. And he's won some fights in pretty good fashion, in my opinion. But if I could stay consistent with some of the things that I've been saying since I've been on YouTube, if a fight is close, I don't mind seeing a rematch. Or like a controversial fight. Most people think one guy won and the other guy got the victory. They got to do it again in my book. For me, that fight wasn't close, man, with Donaire and Rigo. I thought Rigo dominated that fight. He did get knocked down, but he got up and, he hurt Donaire in the last round of that fight. But, I'll soften my stance for this one because history has shown there's a lot of guys that ain't trying to get in the ring with Rigondeaux now at that weight class. I mean, that's the whole reason why he had to move up to 130 to fight Lomachenko. So, if he can't get one of these dudes like an Inui or anybody else that's around there, I would not mind seeing it again. Just because it's hard for this guy to get a fight, man. Even though he's getting older, people thinking that he's slowing down. I still don't see a lot of guys eager to get in the ring with Rigo. So if Donaire is one of those guys that's willing to give us that fight again, then hey, I'll take it, man. But I would much rather see him go in there with a guy like Inui, to be honest with you. But and I'm talking about Rigo.
Right.
And Donaire could, if he could get a rematch with Inui too, I would take that because I thought that was a good fight, close fight. I thought Inui clearly won it though, but it was a close, competitive fight. So either one I'll take. But I don't know, man. I don't know if he's really ready to get back in the ring with Rigo. I think at this point Rigo is still much better than he is, even though they've gotten older. That fight was 7 years ago, man. Can you believe that?
Yep.
7 years ago. So, if it happens, it happens, man. I'm not going to complain about it.
Absolutely. Well said, man. Here's what I will say. Rigondeaux, people saying, I see him in the chat already. Intangible boxing. He's old, DStyle. He's got old legs on him. Nonito Donaire is looking good at this weight. He might catch him. He might have a better shot this time. He might, have a better shot against Rigondeaux this time, that is. And I understand everything you're saying, GFunky. I understand you're saying the fight was, one-sided. Here's what I'll say, though. Although Rigondeaux did outbox Donaire, Donaire did land some at points, and he did knock down Rigondeaux, later in that fight, in the later rounds. So he's capable of dropping them. If Rigondeaux cannot move the way he was moving, and repeat how many years ago that was?
7 years ago.
7 years ago. That was if Rigondeaux cannot move the same way, Nonito Donaire might catch him. I think this is a very interesting fight, and I believe Nonito Donaire deserves every right at this point to get that rematch and right his wrong. As big as I am on Rigondeaux, he has someone here that wants to fight him, and if Nonito Donaire can gain a strap against Oubaali, if he can do that, I see no reason why this fight cannot happen. That's just my opinion. That's how I feel about that. And I have to be honest, after watching the Monster Inoue fight, this might be a little bit of a halo effect or something, but I'm not going to count Donaire out. And look, this is not me Monday morning quarterbacking. When Nonito Donaire was winning Fight of the Year, when Nonito Donaire was being, pumped up, I had Rigondeaux winning that fight before it happened. I felt he would outbox Donaire, and he did. So this is not coming from someone who originally thought Donaire would, beat him. It's someone who did, live videos and said Rigondeaux would win. This time around, I think Nonito Donaire might get to him. I think Nonito Donaire has a shot here, GFunky. I'm not saying he's going to win. I'm just saying he has a very good shot and a better shot this time than he had all those years ago. And to that, you say what?
Well, I would say, I was also one of those guys back in 2013 that was saying that Rigo was going to beat Donaire, even though a lot of dudes in the media were saying that Donaire was the number 3 guy behind Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao at the time. I was one of those rare guys. I made videos and like the young kids say nowadays, check the receipts. I got the receipts on my channel. Anybody want to go back and look at it? The prediction video is still up there. I predicted Rigo to win. He got the win. And while I hear what you're saying, I just think stylistically, Rigo's a bad matchup for Donaire. Donaire is dangerous though, because he's got fast hands, he's a good counter puncher, and we know he's got power in that left hand. Not to mention that right hand of his improved a lot. That's the one thing that is a little concerning if they do have a second fight, because at the time when they had the first fight, Donaire to me was just a left-handed guy. He's just a one-handed fighter at that time. since then, I've seen that right hand improve a lot, and he landed right hands on Inoue pretty regularly in that fight, and actually buzzed him in that fight with a right hand. But that's Inoue, and not to take anything away from him, he's nowhere near the defensive fighter that Rigo is. So I still think it will be a challenge for Donaire, although he can land. We've seen him land on him. We've seen him drop him, even though it was more of like a mistake, I guess you could say, that Rigo made. He tried to come in and clinch, and Donaire landed a shot as he came in to try to clinch him and, dropped him. But to Rigo's credit, he got up and, ended up hurting him pretty badly in that 12th round. But I just think that it's a bad matchup stylistically for a guy like Donaire, who himself gets hit an awful lot. So I see a lot of laser-like left hands landing from Rigo. I see a lot of missing, but who knows at this advanced stage that they're at? Anything could happen. But I would still favor Rigo, but not as much as I did 7 years ago. The gap's gotten a little bit closer for me at this point, but I would still roll with Rigo.
Well, I gotta say, here's where I think yourself and some others are a little mistaken. While Rigondeaux can still box, he can still move pretty decently. He fought the fight of his life against Donaire 7 years ago. That was a fight, and he still got knocked down, bro. Like, Rigondeaux has slowed down a lot, in my opinion, since then. So I think this fight's a lot closer than many people are, giving it credit for, in my opinion. And it's a fight I'm interested to see. I want to see how Donaire would fare against Rigondeaux the second time around. And I know this, Rigondeaux's not going to start trading with Donaire like he has in some other fights. I know ING mentioned that in the chat. He's going to try and box Donaire. That's the way, that's the path to victory, right? To try and put on a boxing lesson. But even if he boxes, man, and moves, sticks and moves, and gauges distance and, and fights in that very, polished and, takes it to that Cuban school of boxing. Even if he does that, he's going to have more problems this time around than he did the first time around. Because the last thing to go on a fighter, GFunky, and everybody listening, is power. All right? That's the last thing to go. And that power is still going to be there for Donaire. And he landed in the first fight. It's just that was so many years ago. He dropped Rigondeaux. Even though it was one-sided, he still landed some. This time, how's Rigondeaux, a lot older now, going to take those punches? And I think he's going to get hit a little more. But that's how I personally see it. I'm interested to know, what do you guys think? Let me know. Put it in the comments section. And that is that. All right. With that said, he fought Roberto Solis on the undercard of Rosso Nyambayari. I remember that fight in Tangible Boxing News. I appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and say this. I mean, before we even talk about him fighting Rigondeaux the second time, GFunky, he's got to get past Oubaali first. And we know Oubaali put a stop to the double dragon. You know what I mean? He beat Monster Inoue's brother, right? And he looked really good in that fight. He looked really good. And I know we were talking about him fighting Inoue, because that's, I would love to see that. Monster Inoue. However, do you believe Donaire will even get past the Frenchman and win that WBC strap in the first place before we even start talking about a Rigondeaux rematch?
Yeah, I think it's a good fight, man. And I do give him a chance because from what we saw from him in his last performance against this guy who a lot of people are saying is unbeatable, the monster, things like that.
Right.
He had Inoue reeling a little bit there. I think it was round 9 or something like that. I can't recall the actual round, but he had him hurt pretty badly. And he fought well. So yeah, I give him a real good chance against I don't want to sound like I'm trying to make fun of this guy. I don't want to butcher his name. But the French guy,
Oubaali.
Yeah, he got rid of the double dragon, like you said, Inoue's brother. So he deserves a shot either at Inoue or if Inoue doesn't want to give him a shot, then Donaire is there. He's clearly one of the best guys in that division at his advanced age. So why not? I think he's got the power in that left hand, and like I said, the improved right hand of Donaire has I think really been a big part of his longevity here. To add something new to his game and not be so dependent on his left hand all the time. So, he's a dangerous guy, man, for any of these dudes until he decides to hang him up, I think. So I think he's got a good chance against the French guy, man. I really do. I'm not trying to sound funny by saying that. I just get Oubaali. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, I'll try to remember it, man. I hate butchering people's names.
GFunky, I don't want to laugh at the French guy and say the name. He starts laughing harder. Like, you know what I mean? but it's all right. Check it out, man. This is the same night he beat Takuma Inoue, which is the brother of Monster Inoue. All right. I do not know the nickname for those new to the show. We said Double Dragon because it was both Inoue brothers. But with that said, when he won that championship, he was the WBC champion. And do you remember the WBC? They wanted to give Monster Inoue like a belt, and Inoue said, "Nah, I don't want it." Mm-hmm. I believe it was like a diamond belt or something. He said, "I don't want the belt." He saw his brother get beat. He don't want that belt. He wants to beat the guy that beat his brother, right? So that's
good. That's very respectable too, especially the way that the WBC is handing out belts these days. That's a very respectable thing of Inoue. To kind of say, you know what, hey, I want to earn this thing. I don't want it handed to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's that. We will see. I know the Oubaali fight got postponed. It was supposed to happen, but COVID knocked all the fights, out, GFunky. You know what I'm talking about? So I mean, that is that. Look, man, Chocolatito Ruben Gonzalez versus Gallo Juan Francisco Estrada. They fought one time. Check out that fight if you haven't already. Ruben Gonzalez did win. It was a big win for him. Controversial in my opinion, but nonetheless he won that fight. It looks like we both know GFunky. We talked about it. I mean, Chocolatito made a big comeback. Man, looked spectacular in his victory. A couple months back, and now they're talking about him fighting Estrada, Juan Francisco Estrada, in a rematch this summer. If this is true, I'm definitely excited about that. This is reported by BatLeftHook.com. Chocolatito Gonzalez versus Juan Francisco Estrada. I think El Gallo gets him this time. I think Francisco Estrada beats him this time. He's in his stride, man. He's looking really good right now. And even though credit to Ruben Gonzalez, he looked spectacular in his comeback. But I think it's going to make the victory a little sweeter for Francisco Estrada. It's a tough call in my opinion, but who do you think wins the rematch?
Well, I thought that Estrada won the first time. But, the thing with these little guys, man, I mean, these fights, they throw so many punches, they land so many punches. It's understandable how, a lot of people can think that Chocolatito won the fight, or people thought Estrada won the fight. I personally think that it was a win for Estrada. And I agree with what you said. Right now, he's rolling right now. He got that win over Sarang V-side. I thought he beat him the first time too, but clearly beat him in the rematch. So I think he's rolling, man. Although I must say, Chocolatito in his return, he looked damn good, man. He looked damn good in there. I was real impressed with what I saw. But if I didn't think he got him the first time, I don't think he's going to get him the second time. But I do think it's still going to be one of those fights, man. I just have a feeling it's going to be one of those fights where we're going to have a lot of people saying this guy won, a lot of people saying this guy won. So if it is close, like I anticipate, we might be seeing a third. I don't think so either, man. I mean, I think it's going to be, again, one of those fights where just, people, when they see it, they're going to see a lot of punches thrown, but I think the more clean, decisive punches will be landed by Estrada. And, I really, really like Estrada. I know this might ruffle some feathers, man, but I think he's the best fighter out of Mexico right now. With Canelo a close second, But I really like Estrada, and I think he's going to win this fight. Like I said, thought he won it the first time, so
right.
man, I like it. I like the fight.
Look, man, I'm just gonna say it. Juan Francisco Estrada is gonna beat his ass. Okay, that's what I think is gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen. All right. I just think he is there. All right. He's hit his stride right now. He's on a roll, man. He looks so polished. He's real fluid, and I think it's gonna be too much for Roman Gonzalez. I think it's a close fight for a couple rounds. I think it's a war for about 5-6 rounds. And like you said, a lot of punches. And the weight class guys just throw a lot of punches in general. But I think Juan Francisco Estrada right now will overwhelm, Chocolatito, and I think it stops him late, man, or just wins a wide decision is what I think happens. That's my prediction. That's what I think happens. You know what I mean? But I think it's going to be a good fight either way. All right. Now, with that said, man, boxing's going to be back June 9th. And ESPN, man, they're going hard. They're coming back on the 9th. They're going to have a card on the 11th, the 16th, the 18th, the 20th. A lot of great dates, ESPN's going hard, GFunky. They're like, we don't have any other sports to show. Now that boxing's back, we're going to have it on like twice a week. So what are your thoughts on, they're coming hard, man, with all these cards right now?
I love it, man. I love it. I can't wait. I almost feel like, and this is a feeling I've never had with boxing, because unlike the other sports, the major sports in this country, boxing doesn't have a season. Where they play the season, and then when the season's over, there's a long break, and then they come back. Like, that's kind of how I feel right now about boxing. It's been gone for 4 months now, I think, since February or March, something like that. March, yeah, okay. I think it was the last big fight was the Wilder.
Well, that was the last big fight and all, but it was early.
Yeah, there was some after.
Either way, yeah.
So, yeah, I got that feeling, man. Like when the NBA is getting ready to, they got the preseason rolling, and it's like, oh, it's almost time, and you're getting excited. Like, I'm real excited, man. And you know what? I don't give a damn if there's no fans in the arena. I just need to see the sport come back. And I'm just gonna say this, man. I'm sick and tired of hearing fans complain about there not being any fans allowed to go to these fights. I mean, number one, like, we're still dealing with the COVID-19 thing, okay? And, so we don't want that thing to get worse than it already is, because, look, it's already put everything on hold for several months now. But these guys are acting like it's such a bad thing to not have anybody there. Like, I mean, how often do we watch major pay-per-views and the first or the second fight? Man, there's nobody there. Maybe like 50 people in an arena that holds like 20,000 people, so let's not act like we haven't been through this before. I mean, I know some of the fighters have said that, they might not be able to get up for a fight where there's no fans, but you know what? If the record's on the line and your belt's on the line, I mean, you better get up, man. And I don't want to hear no excuses, So I like it, man. I'm ready. I'm a junkie. I'm tying off. I'm ready, man. I'm ready for my fix, So G-Funk is pumped up, man. I can't wait.
Yeah, man, I cannot wait for boxing to come back. I'm looking forward. I know Shakur Stevenson, Robesi Ramirez are on the card on the 9th. Yeah, Michaela Miller will be on there as well. People are not that excited about the actual fights, but let's just get the engine rolling first. Let's get the engine rolling. Let's see some fights first, and then we'll go from there, man. They have like 2 times a week this month. They're going to have cards and people fighting. So let's just let the fights go through, bro. Let's just let the fight start. We're gonna get the big fights. We have guys like Errol Spence out here saying he wants a big name quick. He doesn't want a tune-up or anything like that. Well, what are your thoughts on that, GFunky? He just wants to go right in there.
Man, I mean, Earl, he suffered that bad car accident after his big victory over Sean Porter in a great fight. I don't know, man. I mean, if I'm his people in his corner, in his camp, I personally I wouldn't just throw him right in there with a big name. I mean, that was a bad accident, and thank God he came out, safely. I mean, he suffered some injuries, but it could have been a lot worse. Like he could not even be here right now. So, I would kind of test the waters first if I was him. But I mean, they know him. He knows himself. I mean, if he says he's ready, then I have no choice but to believe him. But if it was me, and it was my career, and I was running my career, I would definitely try to test the waters first against, just give myself a tune-up before I get in there with any big name. But hey, if he comes back and fights somebody big, I'll be ordering it if it's on pay-per-view or wherever it's at. I'll be watching, man. So, but I hope he's making the right decision, man. I really do.
Well, boxing will definitely be back. So, and I agree with you on your point about the crowd. What do people want? So you prefer there be no boxing whatsoever? So what? Just I don't want to be that guy that tells people, hey, just be happy with what you get. That's not who I am. I tell people all the time, demand the best fights. Don't settle for anything. So I'm not trying to be that guy, right? But in this is a very extreme situation. So, we need to get the jump start somewhere. Everyone's just trying to get a jump start in life right now. So let's just get boxing started, and then we'll go back to doing what we do as fans and demand the best fights, right? Let's do that. But let's get it started first, And I get it, Chicano Prophet. A good crowd does something for a live event. I get it. But at the end of the day, do you want no boxing because there's no fans in the crowd, or you rather have some boxing? So that's what I'm saying. Now,
yeah, and what else is cool too? I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but all this barking that you've been covering, these guys on Twitter, hey, it's time now, baby. It's time to put your money where your mouth is, So we got to call these dudes out, and we got to, hold them accountable for their words on Twitter, man. Boxing's back, so let's get this thing on, man.
Yeah, a lot of fighters have been talking a lot of shit, okay? And well, we have the receipts of all the shit you talked, like the cool kids say nowadays. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man. Erik Morales responds back to Juan Manuel Marquez. We've been doing like it's almost like every time I cover this, like the next day somebody says something, So we're just following this story as it progresses. And Morales responds to Juan Manuel Marquez now. And Juan Manuel, said, hey, I was ranked in those weight classes. I was there. Okay, period. And furthermore, he also talked about, hey, I'm not defined by a knockout punch. That's not what I'm defined by. I beat Pacquiao those other times. They just wouldn't give me the decision, so that's why I had to knock him out. It's basically what he said, right? So Morales comes back and says, you didn't want to fight me, he said. He said, we offered the fight. So when I was a top rank, when he was a top rank, we offered the fight. Instead of fighting Maidana, I should have fought him. He didn't want to fight me. When I beat Conor for the championship, and it was supposed to be Juan Manuel Marquez, not Danny Garcia. He didn't want the fight. What do you say, GFunky?
I think this is very entertaining for sure. These two finally exchanging some words. I mean, yeah, it's through social media and things like that, but it's fun. It's entertaining. I've always said this about those weight classes back in the day, that Marquez was the guy who was, on the outside looking in, and that goes from my guy Barrera too, who I was a fan of his back then. But I honestly believe that these dudes didn't want no smoke with Marquez back then, man. I mean, that's just the way I felt about it. Now, later in Morales' career, I know he's saying he should have, instead of fighting Danny Garcia, it should have been Marquez. I mean, Marquez was in the middle of a thing with Pacquiao at the time. He was chasing Pacquiao all around the world, trying to get him to get in the ring again. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. There's no really, I guess there's really no way to know for sure that they offered him the fight then. It would make sense to me that Marquez probably, if there was an offer, he probably turned it down. He's like, look, I'm trying to fight this guy, like this dude owes me, he's been robbing me. He owes me. So I'm going after him. But I honestly believe that if he would have got in the ring with both of those guys back in the day when they were, early 2000s, I'd say, honestly think he beats them both. I think they're really good fights. I mean, we know he beat Barrera. That was a little bit later in Barrera's career, but I still think he would have beat him back then too. I mean, that's just the way I feel about it. But we'll never know, man. We'll never know the truth of what happened back then, why he never got a shot at those dudes. But I just remember even though I was a Barrera fan in the early part of the century, once Marquez finally got him in the ring, I was rooting for Marquez that night because I felt like he finally got a shot at this dude, at one of those big names from Mexico, to try to solidify himself as one of the best Mexicans of the era, along with Morales and Barrera. All three of them are all great. It's just too bad we couldn't get them all in the ring around that time when they should have, So that's my take on it, man.
So the prophet says, Morales, now that Marquez is held in a higher esteem in the retirements and he can't handle it. Man, Intangible Boxing News says Erik Morales is one of my favorite fighters, and I love that dude. All right, get this. Smoke says Morales versus Juan Manuel Marquez. Fire. What's up to Drew Titan? How's it going? Chicano Prophet says, I remember they lately negotiated very late in their careers, and if I remember, they could not agree to wait, and the negotiations never got serious. According to Morales, okay, this dude was ducking them, bro. You know what? I believe Morales, GFunky.
Yeah, I mean, we'll never know, man, for sure. But
I think here's the truth, bro. In all seriousness, I think Marquez, he just had, like, no offense to Morales, and believe me, I mean no offense to him. Marquez just had bigger fish to fry at that point. What had Morales really done? When you think about it, he was coming off 2 losses in a row to Pacquiao. He had that, loss to David Diaz out of Chicago. He had a loss, that's about it. Like, really? When he came back against Maidana, no one took that fight serious, bro. No, nobody was saying, dude, I remember, people forget this. Like, anytime there's a great fight, sometimes people forget what they were saying about that fight, if you get what I mean. Like, people were saying, me included, this fight's a joke. Morales at 140, a career featherweight, fighting at, Maidana 140. He looked at she had love handle. We're like, this is terrible. He's going to get destroyed. And then he comes out and he shocks the world. I thought he won that fight against Maidana, but you think Marquez is going to get any credit if he fought that Morales? No. You know what I mean? Like, Marquez had bigger fish to fry at that point, bro. He was chasing Pacquiao, who was hot, bro. People were telling Marquez he had no business in the ring with Pacquiao, but he wanted that smoke. That dude wanted all that smoke, bro. He was barbecuing, okay? And then he beat Cesar Cano, which I get was a really good win for Morales, especially at that age. Okay, but he beat Cano better than Mosley did. Cano fought Mosley like a little after that, which is interesting. But he won a title right at 140 against Cesar Cano, but was anyone really going to take Marquez fighting him at that point serious?
No.
Like, what do you remember? Like, What was your perception of Morales at that point, GFunky? From what you remember, I want the chat to tell me, what do you remember about Morales at that point? To me, he was a way past his prime fighter. To me,
I agree. Definitely well past his prime. Although you still seeing flashes of El Terrible, when he was in there, but just not consistently like we were seeing during his prime. Man, it was a good fight with Maidana, man, and I might have to agree with you. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that fight again. But man, that was a good close fight, man. That might be one of those fights I'm gonna have to sit back and watch tonight while I'm on quarantine. Go back and watch that thing. But no, you've seen Morales do some really good things later in his career, out of his prime. So but yeah, man, at that point, I mean, what a victory over. I mean, if Marquez gets in there and he most likely beats him at that point. I don't think he gets much credit for it, So
no, he doesn't get credit for it.
Yeah. So
I have to disagree with you, GFunky. I don't think he did great things later, like past his prime. I think, he had a little bit of a Cinderella story, but at the end of the day, he didn't win. People forget he didn't win the Maidana fight. He lost. I thought he won, but it's irrelevant. He lost that fight, right? And then he beat Cano, but then that was literally like his last win. I don't know about literally, but what I mean is his last notable win. And then he had a good performance against a young Danny Garcia, and won a couple rounds, but I don't like. For me, I'm not going to say that was great. Like, he did something great. To me, that just means that he hung in there against a younger fighter, a guy who was natural to that weight class compared to him, and then he got knocked down late in that fight. I just think it's kind of like if, it's kind of like just like I guess to say he did better than expected. But he didn't do great things, though. Like, what great things did he do? He lost to David Diaz. Like, what great wins did he have, I should ask? Did he have any great wins?
No, I don't think he had any great wins. But I just want to kind of clarify what I meant by I want to say great things. Like, it's kind of like this. Like, if I could compare it to another sport, like we see guys, like for the NBA example, when we see guys that are great, like when they were in their prime, they were considered, one of the best, like Morales was. And then they stick around, they're still able to play, but you could tell they're not the same. Every now and then you'll see flashes of them. Like they'll have a game where they score like 40 or something like that when they've been scoring like 10 to 12 every night for the rest of the season. They'll have like a handful of games where they just kind of go off and you see that greatness, that they have it come out every now and then. So that's kind of what I meant, was when we seen him against, like you said, he had moments against Danny Garcia, a young Danny Garcia. He did very well against Marcos Maidana. So I mean, that's kind of what I was kind of saying about that. Like, did he have any great wins though? No, he didn't. But that Maidana fight's debatable, if you want to, look at it. But he still didn't get the win. But he did show some flashes. That's kind of what I meant.
Well, he showed flashes, but I mean, I don't know. I still wouldn't categorize it as he did great things. I guess he had great moments, and if the judges, this is where judges play such a pivotal role. If the judges give him the nod against Maidana, man, dude, that's like the comeback of the year type win. That's a huge win. He could retire right there. That'll be historic. Especially after seeing what Maidana did later on, like beating Broner, giving Mayweather a hell of a fight in the first fight, and even stunning Mayweather in the second fight. Like, imagine if Morales has that win and retires with that. Not that he would. I mean, he didn't retire after the loss, but it just, the course of history didn't quite go his way, and I think he was one of those fighters that stayed around a little too long. And it's unfortunate, but that's how I see it. And back to the point, I don't think, him pointing out the fact that they offer Marquez these fights, or It's not like, to me, we should be talking about when you guys were in your prime and you were at 126 pounds. Why didn't you fight Marquez then? I think that should be the discussion. When Marquez and Nacho bring up, hey, we were the number one contender, we were told we're going to be the mandatory, and they switched it on us, without telling us. And you're going to fight Paulo Ayala. Nothing against Paulo Ayala, great fighter, big win for Morales, but those are things that Morales has not addressed, GFunky. He hasn't addressed those things. He's talking about later in his career.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's why when Marquez finally got his shot, against he didn't get Morales, but he got his hands on Barrera and beat Barrera. So I was very happy that night that he beat him because because there was a rivalry there between the three good guys out of Mexico at the time. And then he got his chance against Pacquiao, and we saw what he did there. So, yeah, it really should be, why didn't the fight happen at 126? When you guys are all in your prime. Same thing with Barrera. I got to call you out too. Even though I was a Barrera fan back then, but
Barrera fought him. Barrera fought him. He
fought him, but it was later on, and later than it should have been. I think those guys should have fought, like you said, at 120. Yeah, I think they should have fought at 126, man.
Well, I mean, I hear you, but they were still pretty good fighters still when they fought, I think. You know what I mean? So,
well, the reason why I say this is because I don't know if I'm not saying you were saying this, but there was people that I know personally that were saying, well, Barrera, he already got beat by Pacquiao, right. So, they were already kind of hating on Marquez before the fight even happened, so that's why I wish it would have happened before. This way there'd be no excuse,
Absolutely. I mean, people will always say that, right? You're coming off, several fights ago, a loss or something. I hear you, man. Absolutely. You guys are tuning in to the Wednesday, June 3rd edition of Hispanics, Causin, Panic. Make sure you throw a jab at the like button. All right. The four most influential Mexican fighters of all time. Of all time. De todos los tiempos. All right. Now, before we start the list, this is, for the most part, subjective, guys. All right. So if you personally have a fighter that you believe was more influential, I get it, and I welcome the discussion. I welcome any knowledge anybody wants to share. I welcome you guys posting about it. I welcome the discussion. A lot of great fighters in the history of Mexico. Now, this is fighters straight out of Mexico, right? We can make a shirt out of that, straight out of Mexico. But anyway, Los Cuatro Aztecas. Because Chicano Prophets, who is in the chat, GFunky, he wanted a Mount Rushmore. You know what I mean? But that doesn't sound right, bro. Like, four Mexican fighters, give me a Mount Rushmore. You know what I mean? I don't know about that, but we're going to give you Los Cuatro Aztecas, the four most influential. Now, the key word is influential, not so much the best or something like that, and we kind of came up with this list, and we hope you guys can respect it. I'd like to hear what you guys agree or disagree with. Share it in the chat, comment section, or whatever platform you're listening to this on. But let's go ahead and get this started, GFunky. We talked about this list earlier. So the four most influential Mexican boxers of all time. I'm going to have to start with this one. This guy rarely gets talked about. And it was a big, essential part of Mexican boxing. He was featured a lot on the Ring in Espanol magazine for a reason. He was a Mexican welterweight champion in the days where that meant something. There was a time where being the champion of your country, you had to become the champion of your country before you could even, step onto the world stage. Nowadays, not so much, but that's okay. Luis Villanueva Parano, Kid Azteca is what he's best known as, man. He fought from 1932 to 1961, 29 years he fought out of Mexico City, 192 wins, 47 losses, 11 draws, 114 wins coming by way of knockout. I mean, dude, 114 dudes got knocked out. That's a lot of fighters to knock out, right? We don't even have fighters fight that many times now. This guy has more knockouts, right, than, a lot of people have fights. So with that said, GFunky, what's your thoughts on, the Mexican welterweight champ, bro, Kid Azteca, and his influence in Mexican boxing?
Very influential, man, and very rarely talked about too, which is kind of a crime. Us boxing fans, we got to do a little bit better job than that. We've already done a show. We've featured him on the top 11 Mexican fighters of all time. Make sure you guys go back and check that out if you haven't seen it. But yeah, man, to have 252 fights total and to almost have 200 wins, and like you said, knocked out over 100 guys, 114 guys. Like I don't think there's many men on this planet that can say that they've knocked out 114 guys in their lifetime.
Man, I'm almost there, G-Funk.
DStyle catching up. He's right on them. But what's crazy is, the name Kid Azteca. This guy really is like an Aztec warrior, man. To have that many fights, 250 fights in your career, and still live to be 88 years old, that is, man, credit to him and his longevity in life, man. And going through all those fights, and fighting for almost 30 years, man, like an amazing feat, man. An amazing fighter, and definitely deserves to be in the discussion as a top most influential boxers ever come out of Mexico, man.
Absolutely, man. And you got to keep in mind, he's fighting in an era where, there was only 8 divisions. There was only, one champion per division for the most part, right? Exceptions here and there. But, when people, look at guys like Kid Azteca and, try to compare him with modern day fighters, like more modern day, guys that have won multiple world championships, when there's like 4 or 5 championships and like double the amount of weight classes and regular belts and super belts. It's not a good way to assess things at all. This is a guy that was ranked up there for years and brought a lot of attention, to Mexican boxing and to Mexico, and deserves to be on this list. Like, his name will forever be etched in stone. All right. And and he's Kid Azteca. How doesn't he make the Cuatro Aztecas? You know what I mean? He's got to be there. But shout out to him. Here's a second name. My grandfather's personal favorite fighter. Right. And Get the Smoke mentioned the name, but Ruben Olivarez, also from Mexico City, by the way, 89, 13-3, and get this, you funk, of his 89 wins, 79 were by way of knockout. That this guy's not a heavyweight. This guy, he was a bantamweight and a featherweight, and 79 of his victories out of 89 wins was by knockout. He was a puncher. He could crack, to say the least. Right? At bantamweight, man, he was 50-0-1 when he fought for the championship. Won, of course. Right? But, this was, a fighter, man. A bantamweight was a beast. Most of his losses came when he moved up to featherweight, which, by the way, he still won the championship twice, right? Now, this time you had the WBA, the WBC. Like, they were starting to kind of, have more bouts at this point, which maybe that's why he won the title at featherweight. But nonetheless, if they give it credit to the guys today, you got to give him credit for that too. And I'm telling you, man, he most of the losses were later in his career, and so don't let a lot of guys they let losses get in the way of kind of analyzing these fighters. But Ruben Olivarez, great fighter, big puncher, good boxer. How do you see? What are your thoughts on Ruben Olivarez, GFunky?
Well, man, I don't know how I could follow up what you just said, man. I mean, listen to this, guys. I mean, I'm going to say it, and if anybody wants to call me out on this later on, I don't give a damn. I consider Ruben Olivarez the greatest bantamweight fighter ever, in my opinion. Um, like you said, man, those type of knockouts, they don't come in those lower weight classes like that, man. This dude was putting people to sleep, in his prime, and like you said, moved up to featherweight, even fought at super featherweight later in his career. But yeah, I mean, he's another guy, over 100 fights, almost 80 knockouts on his record for a guy who fought his career at bantamweight and featherweight. Like, that's crazy, man. That is insane. And he was the first, I think. I don't know if he was the first or not, but I know that he was called the El Gran Campeón Mexicano before Julio Cesar Chavez. So, shout out to Ruben Olivarez, man, the greatest bantamweight of all time, in my opinion.
Well, the reality is, El Gran Campeón Mexicano, it wasn't like a in-ring nickname. Like, it's not something you walked out to the ring and that's what they called you by the announcer. The smart thing Chavez or his people did, is, I guess you could say, market the Gran Campeón Mexicano thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, his nickname was El Puas. So there you go. Shout out to Get the Smoke. But yeah, Ruben Olivarez, man, great fighter. I remember my grandfather always, telling me about Ruben Olivarez. And yeah, one thing he would say is this: what he would say, he was like, Ruben Olivarez was like a reincarnation of Pajarito Moreno, but with better boxing skills and a better chin. Because Pajarito Moreno could punch hard, you know what I mean? But he didn't have a chin. Like, all his losses, he would get caught and get knocked out. And he was an okay boxer, but he wasn't as scientific as a Ruben Olivarez. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man, absolutely. Ruben Olivarez, man, one thing I could say, I mean, just razor sharp. I mean, this guy was razor sharp in the ring. And I think part of the reason he has so many knockouts is because of how razor sharp he was in that ring, man. And for him, again, I got to remind people, I mean, to go from bantamweight to featherweight and still become world champion, still have great fights. And, he got older, obviously, so he started losing later on in his career. We see that a lot, but you got to respect that, man. He could have just fought a bantamweight GFunky and call it a day and just, retire as possibly the best bantamweight of all time. But, he still moved up to featherweight. Look at his record, bro. A lot of his early wins, a lot of his knockouts were early. He would knock dudes out cold early. And why do I say that? A lot of stoppages in the lower weight classes are from accumulation, from beating guys up in the course of action. And he did have those type of wins too, but a lot of wins, GFunky. First round, second round knockouts. When he moved up in weight, that's amazing. All right. I mean, that's some Mike Tyson type shit. You know what I'm saying? All right. But let's go ahead and to the next one. Like nobody knows what we're gonna say. You know what I mean? And you said it. You said his name, GFunky. El Gran Campeón Mexicano. Do you always hear Jimmy Lennon's voice when you say that?
Every single time.
El Gran Campeón Mexicano. I can't get that voice out of his head, bro. I always think of Jimmy Lennon Jr. when he says it. Okay, I mean, El León de Culiacán, bro. Right? Before they called him Gran Campeón Mexicano. They also call him JC Superstar. Right? But again, very smart to make him El Gran Campeón Mexicano. You know what I mean? By the way, GFunky, did your grandfather tell you that Ruben Olivarez is a real Gran Campeón Mexicano?
How'd you know that one?
Because that's my grandfather always told me that.
Hey man, you know it to
Oh,
me.
Olivares is gonna.
Yeah, although my grandfather loved Chavez too. I mean, don't get it wrong, he loved Chavez also, but you know he just thought Olivares was better. But yeah, I mean you have to put Chavez on this list, man.
An Azteca, bro. Check it out. Now he's from Hulacan, as I mentioned, 107. Okay, 6 losses, 2 draws, 89 wins, coming by way of knockout. He had as many knockouts as Olivares had wins. Okay, but he was 89-0 when he got beat. Although many would argue, I get it about Whitaker, right? That was a draw, but nonetheless, the feat is still there. I mean, this is still very impressive, right? What do you remember about Julio, Cesar, Chavez? Because to me, bro, let me tell you this. I grew up thinking Chavez was like a superhero, bro. I thought this guy was invincible, right? I did. Like, you know what the first fight? Ask me what the first fight I ever seen. You probably already know, but
DStyle, which was the first Julio Cesar Chavez fight you seen?
Well, the first fight I ever seen, period. The first fight I ever seen, period, was Chavez Taylor. It's the first fight I ever saw that I remember watching. I was at my uncle's house. I was sitting down, my back laid against the sofa. My dad sitting on the sofa above me, and we're watching this fight, right? And I still remember, like, when I sat down, I was a little kid, and my dad goes, "Ándale, vamos a ver el boxeo para que te hagas hombre. Like, we're gonna watch boxing so you can become a man." You know what I mean? And I'm watching this fight, bro, and I'm amazed at what I'm seeing. But like they couldn't make a movie that good. And regardless how you feel about the dramatic end, since I was a kid used to watching movies, I almost expected that to happen in a weird way. I was just a naive little kid that just expected Chavez, the protagonist, to come from behind and win in the end. And that's exactly what happened. So my high and my love for boxing started right then and there. And Chavez was not beloved in Mexico at first. He just wasn't. But once he established himself as the man in Mexico, and as he started to continue win after win after win, once he won that Maldrick Taylor fight, he went from being a very big star in Mexico to the mega star. That's when he really became El Gran Campeón Mexicano. And that's that. But what do you remember about Chavez, bro?
Man, very, very similar things for me. You know, always watching fights with the family, with Chavez. You know, I was a big Chavez fan. I mean, the guy, he's just one of the greatest, man, to come out of Mexico. I mean, he's won world titles in 3 different weight divisions, over 100 victories in his career. And like you said, 89-0. I mean, that's insane, man, to hear. Somebody actually was 89-0 at one point. But yeah, that Taylor fight was the high profile fight for him, his very first one. I mean, some might argue other guys before were big fights too, but no, but this was the one because, you know, Mildred Taylor was an Olympic gold medalist, you know, very fast hands, and Chavez was the guy from Mexico. Just one hell of a fight, man. I enjoy watching that fight. Even though there was a lot of controversy at the end of it, still a hell of a fight. And that's really, yeah, you're right. That's really what put him on the map because it was a huge fight here in the United States. So, you know, Chavez is on the big stage here, got the victory. I mean, I know it was controversial. They got in there and fought again. And I mean, Taylor was just, that wasn't Mildred Taylor, you know, in that second fight. But, you know, Chavez, I was a big fan of his. I was in complete shock when Randall beat him, you know, shout out to Frankie, the Surgeon Randall, you know. He was a hell of a fighter too back in the day, but I was young. So, I mean, I was really in shock that he lost, you know, because like you said, he had that he was like an invincible guy, like nothing. The guy was never hurt, never knocked down, never lost, you know, he's always punishing guys, and I mean, it was just shocking for me as a little kid to see him finally lose. But yeah, you can't have any kind of list naming top Mexican fighters without mentioning
And
El
what
Gran Campeón.
what makes him influential is not just that he won and all that. Like what makes these guys like Kid Azteca, right? Like he was that one guy that really helped propel and put Mexican boxing on the map. And then you have Ruben Olivarez, who really was one of those first like really dominant fighters and a big puncher at a very low weight class. And like you said, right, like our grandfather talked about how he was a real Gran Campeón Mexicano. Like he was big, he was a big star. And then of course you have Chavez, who started that pay-per-view kind of revolution with Don King, and he was a big star, bro. Like people forget that like Chavez was selling like closed circuit and like doing like pretty close to like pay-per-view numbers, and making a lot of money and a lot of like when the millions were coming in, the big pockets for the at the time 140 pounds was not that normal, and the big paydays came, and that's what made him very, very influential, in my mind, and became one of those staple, HBO fighters. Salvador Sanchez. The only time Salvador Sanchez lost anything to Puerto Rican was when the mariachi band lost to the salsa band. I got to keep it real. Yeah. But he avenged the mariachis in the Gomez fight. But Salvador Sanchez, we all know, was a great fighter. His victory, 15th round knockout over Zuma Nelson, coming back from behind against possibly the greatest African fighter of all time, destroying Little Red Lopez. I mean, he made Little Red Lopez's red face look more red, right? If that's possible. And of course, the Gomez win goes without saying that Mexico-Puerto Rican rivalry, that's possibly the biggest win ever. I mean, keep in mind, Gomez was coming off, defeating, Pintor in a hell of a fight, by the way, and he was knocking out Mexican after Mexican almost. So for him to defeat Gomez, who was moving up from 122 to challenge him for his 126 strap at featherweight, that was a big moment. And to dominate made it even sweeter. But what makes him, like, we know he's good. Like, we know he had the skill. What made him influential was, even though he died young, he reminded everybody that no matter how young a fighter is, it's never too early to be great. It's never too early to do great things. Today we keep hearing about, this guy, he's only 26 years old. Give him some time. Sanchez was young when he died, 23 when he died. All the great things he did was in a 2.5, 3-year span. And you look at that resume, it's unbelievable he fought. GFunky, what are your thoughts on Salvador Sanchez?
Yeah, a lot of great things accomplished in a very short life. At 23, he was already the WBC and lineal featherweight champion. And like you said, beating Azuma Nelson in a fight that he was down in, coming back. But yeah, that Gomez fight, man. Anytime I hear my older relatives talk about that fight, that's like the one. That's the one that they're like, man, like everybody was so pumped up because the rivalry between the Mexicans and the Puerto Ricans. It's a big deal, especially in boxing. And I remember listening to my dad and his friends, like when I started hosting fight parties at my place, talk about like, man, I remember when Sanchez and Gomez were fighting, like the streets were empty here in the town because everybody was watching the fight. And, we were talking some shit, because Puerto Ricans are always saying, oh, Gomez, he's the best pound for pound, and no way Sanchez is going to beat him. But then Sanchez knocks him out, dominates him, man. what a great fighter, and just man, taken to us far too soon, man. Like you said, all of like his resume at the age of 23, like man, just imagine if he would have fought on, and you know the tragic accident didn't happen. You know, just imagine what he could have done, man. Just unbelievable, man. It's almost like I feel like me being a musician, a guitarist, when I talk about a guy like Sanchez dying so young and just trying to imagine what he could have been, it's almost like the way I speak about Jimi Hendrix. Like, just imagine what Hendrix could have done if he would have stayed alive. Like, because he was in my opinion, the most influential guitarist ever. I mean, geez, it's crazy to think about what could have happened, man. But rest in peace to Salvador Sanchez. In my opinion, the best fighter out of Mexico, and he's definitely one of the most influentials also, man, because he's got the biggest victory in the Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry, in my opinion.
That's a big win. Big win, especially when you look at the bodies that Gomez was leaving behind, bro. That's what made it sweet. You know what I mean? When you look at the atmosphere, man, you don't see atmospheres like that anymore. And I know Chicano Prophets over here. What about the new guys? Like, bro, like I'm telling you right now, man, you cannot create that an atmosphere like that has to be organic. That's what it has to be. It has to be organic, bro. And I'm telling you right now, man, what that atmosphere in that win was big. But aside from that, you know, for him to accomplish so much when he was so young, and just go for greatness. You know, remember that you can die any day. You know, you don't know if you're going to see tomorrow. You don't know if tomorrow's going to come. So reach for the stars today if you want to achieve greatness, and that's what he did. You know, to his credit. To answer Big Dog Willie, Salvador Sanchez, he's not my favorite fighter of all time. I'm just keeping it real. My favorite fighter of all time is Erik Morales, right? But Salvador's definitely up there for sure. But with that said, GFunky, give us some final words.
Well, this is a great conversation, man, and I like these kind of conversations because they are subjective, and you know, I like to hear different people's opinions on these things. So it's a great conversation to have anytime you do lists like this, whether it be top fighters or most influential, or you know, hardest punchers, or you know, whatever the list is. You know, they're always fun to do. Super excited that boxing's coming back. Can't wait, man. You know, I've been in my new place now for almost 2 months, and I haven't had a chance to host a fight party. You know, so I'm super pumped about that. Inviting some family over once the quarantine gets lifted, and watching some fights. And you know, I'm just glad to be back talking boxing, man. I know I had a miss last week for you know, situations, but you know, it's all good, man. I'm glad to be back, and as always, I want to thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Thank you guys in the chat for hanging there with us and talking some boxing with us, man. Make sure you hit that like button, and you know, continue to support DStyle Boxing, man. He's doing his thing, man. So thank you.
All right, absolutely. And A-Rod brought up a really good point. Rosario is the one who made Chavez wear the red, you know, thread, or you know, the bandana on the forehead for brujeria. Yeah, man. That's where that's really influential, because now you see a bunch of Mexican fighters wearing that red bandana and stuff.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, so we always got the answer for the brujeria, bro. You know what I mean? Like brujeria, we got shit. Like if you go Mexican, you got all types of counters. You know, we're like in Mexican culture, we're like counter punchers against brujeria. You know what I mean? Like so, bring on the brujeria, all right? And we got a counter punch for that. But yes, we cannot forget the red bandana for sure. With that said, guys, this is DStyle Boxing, and for GFunky, what do we say, GFunk?
keep it boxing.
Keep it boxing. We're out.